There's going to be some talk on the program today about dog whistles. Now, I just want to make clear, when you hear me talking about dog whistles, that should not be taken as a dog whistle. No, this is literally me talking about dogs whistling. So don't misunderstand it. You're probably thinking now, oh, he's probably nodding and winking as he says that because he's literally putting a dog whistle in there, and we all know what that means. We all know what a literal dog whistle means on a podcast. So if you do find yourself listening to the dog whistling thing and find, oh, I know what he's secretly saying there, please let me know. I'd be very interested to hear what it is you think I'm trying to say. As we'll discuss later, I can't even whistle. Even if I wanted to do a dog whistle, well, I suppose if I wanted to do a dog whistle, I'd get a dog in to do it. So no, that wouldn't be a problem. The fact that I can't whistle wouldn't be a problem because it's a dog whistle. Even people who can whistle and who want to do a dog whistle wouldn't do. Oh, no, wait, that's not right either, though. A dog whistle isn't a dog whistling. A dog whistle is a whistle that only a dog can hear. Isn't that it? The dog wouldn't be whistling, the dog would be hearing the whistle. And as it happens later in the show, I do discuss in quite some depth the concept of a dog hearing a whistle. Well, the dog is sort of whistling. I don't want to preempt it. Suffice to say, there's no dog whistles on this program, and if you hear a dog whistle on it, well, for one thing, you're a dog. If you're listening to this program and you hear a literal dog whistle, you're a dog. Firstly, but also you're not hearing it from this program. There's no literal dog whistles on this program. There's a harmonica at one point, but no, there's no dog whistles. So if you're hearing a dog whistle, it's probably coming from outside. Are you listening to this on the earphones and hearing a sound coming from outside? It's a dog whistle, and you're picking that up because, well, you're a dog. Or else you're someone who's trained how to understand dog whistles. You're like Dr. Dolittle. Except why would Dr. Dolittle learn to understand dog whistles? That's not going to help him talk to the dog. That's going to help him talk to someone who's trying to talk to a dog. He's intercepting. Back in World War II, if you had dogs involved in international spy communication, you're trying to decode it. Perhaps if there was a dog transmitting messages to Hitler's people, you might get Dr. Dolittle in to try and understand that, because they're transmitting the dog whistle to dogs who were somehow, like the way they had carrier pigeons and messenger birds and things. Perhaps they used dogs in that way during the war. You use the dog whistle to transmit Morse code that can only be picked up by a dog, and whoever the dog belongs to, who's an agent somewhere, is able to figure out what the dog is picking up and decode it. I suppose like having a sniffer dog. They're able to communicate to their owner that they're detecting something, and the owner somehow figures out what the Morse code message is and transcribes it and does whatever is necessary. So maybe they did that during the war. But no, there's none of that on this program today. If you hear a dog whistle on the show today, A, you're a dog, and B, it's not from this show. It's from outside somewhere. You're hearing it from somewhere else. Anyway, it's into your head. That's what it is.
Into your head, into your head, into your head, into your head, into your head.
Number 849. We've a lot to get on with today. Items that need to be attended to. Issues that need to be addressed. Topics. Oh, topics. We're positively booming to the seams with topics. We've got topics coming out of. Oh, this booker. I have a booker here. I'm growing fond of this booker, I have to say. Hasn't really crossed into my radar before, but there's a big plastic booker here in the spare room. I think there's more than one. And I didn't appreciate this booker until recently when I literally kicked a bucket a couple of times. We didn't used to have metal cleaning buckets until recently, but for some reason we've upgraded to metal cleaning buckets. It's been decided that they're the way to go. They get in the way. You trip over them. They're not round. They're a weird shape. It's easy to trip over them. And I've tripped over metal buckets recently. I can tell you it's terrifying. I didn't hurt myself or fall or anything. If that had turned into a trip, first I would have banged my shins against the bucket. Then I would have gone over on top of the bucket, probably crushed my knees and what's left of my shins on the metal of the bucket, and then gone over further and possibly crashed my face into the conservatory. I could have easily gone flying over and then out through one of the big glass windows and doors of that conservatory, because 3 of the 4 walls of that conservatory are glass, essentially. That wouldn't have ended well. And then if you'd gone through the glass door, of course, you end up on the concrete step outside. It is a concrete step that's being adapted. It has a fancy safety rail. If your head hits that rail, you're fucked. So no, I find metal buckets quite terrifying. So when I happen to come across this old bucket that's not being used, it's a nice round, clean plastic bucket. I like this. It comes across to be very friendly. It's a friendly bucket and I like it, even though I have no use for it. I think I used it during the few weeks ago when this room started flooding a bit. There was a plumbing issue. I used this bucket for that. I didn't use it in the way you imagine it, to pick up buckets of water off the floor. I didn't get to that point. But during the clean-up, I was throwing rubbish into this bucket, and I found it useful. So it's a nice bucket, and I appreciate it more than I used to. I don't think I've ever really been harmed by a metal bucket at all. But I think of one, and it's like when you watch, I don't know if you ever watched that movie about the French fella. There was a French tightrope walker in the 70s or 80s. There was something wrong with him. He had no fear of anything. So he went to America. Him and a couple of accomplices sneaked up to the roof of one of the 2 twin towers of the World Trade Center, set up a tightrope and walked across from one Trade Center tower to the other and back again. They show that in the movie, and when I look at it, I'm enjoying the movie very much, but when I look at it and they show the view looking down from that rope, it's terrifying. And that's how I feel when I think about a metal mop bucket just existing. I find that terrifying. Now, that's interesting to me because, firstly, this is a metal mop bucket, the type of big metal mop bucket with all the stuff you use with the little rack for squeezing the mop into. It's not a round, friendly shape even, like the plastic bucket is. This plastic bucket isn't a cleaning bucket. It's just a perfectly round, circular bucket. So fuck metal mop buckets in advance. Because one of them is going to hurt me someday and I want to get my criticism in advance. Once upon a time, there was a dog. A dog. A dog, 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 basically a dog. And this dog is walking along one day, walking along the road, minding his own business, whistling to himself. Now, I'm not claiming that dogs can whistle. Dogs can't whistle, except they can. I can't whistle, but I can whistle to myself in my head. Inside my head, I can whistle. I can imagine my favourite song or whatever, my most hated song that I've got stuck as an earworm in my head, and I can whistle it in my head. And it's not just humming it or imagining the tune in my head. I'm imagining whistling. I don't actually do this, but I imagine now that I could if I wanted to. If I was so inclined, I could sit here, think of a tune that's in my head and start a whistle version in my head. Now, why I would do that, I don't know. Got access to a brain that can replay music in my head. Why would I replay a whistled version instead? You might as well have Muzak then. A lot of us from my era have the Queen song Bohemian Rhapsody in our heads. And if we wanted, we could play that in our heads, in our imagination, no problem. We could imagine all the words and the vocals and the harmonies and play that in our head like our own little entertainment system. Or we could do Instead of playing the proper Queen version, we could play a whistled version, or the type of music that they play in elevators and lifts. We could play a Muzak version of Bohemian Rhapsody in our heads if we wanted to. But why would you? That would be ridiculous. I remember when I was collecting all these Queen albums. I got into Queen when I was about 14. Spent a year going round to every second-hand record shop I could find, getting all their albums. There was about 18 studio albums to collect, some live stuff as well. And then a couple of times there was some bootlegs you'd come across. And then sometimes you come across a thing that would be some orchestra playing the songs of Queen. And you go, why in the name of Christ would I buy that? Because it turns out I did buy that a couple of times. As a weird kid, I thought, oh, I have a whole shelf of Queen tapes now. I want to extend that. I have all their albums, but I want to extend that. I want to have more and more Queen on this tape rack. It looks cool. It didn't look cool at all. It looked ridiculous and sounded ridiculous. You get a British Royal Philharmonic Orchestra playing the songs of Queen. I used to like to keep my Queen tapes in chronological order. She'd have their first album was called Queen, and their second album was called Queen 2. You get this one that was by Smile, which was the band that Brian May and Roger Taylor were in before they met Freddie Mercury, and there's a bootleg of their stuff. So will I put this at the beginning of the shelf before Queen 1 would be chronologically correct? Or would also be a bit illegitimate, because for one thing, it's not a Queen album. For another, it's a bootleg. It's not real. It shouldn't be there at all. Where do I put it? And then there was a Queen at the Beeb. Queen recorded some sessions at the BBC that was re-recordings of songs from their first two albums. Where does that go on the shelf? Absolutely ridiculous. Well, I was being ridiculous. When you're a slightly OCD 14-year-old, you have to think about that when you have a band. And what do you do with their solo albums? Their drummer had several solo albums. Do you slot them in chronologically between the Queen tapes? I didn't like that because it kind of breaks up the shelf a bit. It doesn't look good. Anyone who comes along who doesn't know who the fuck Roger Taylor is goes, what in the name of Christ is that? Not that anyone was seeing this. It wasn't like on display in a shop window. But you think about these things. Well, I do anyway. Or I did anyway. And then there's their greatest hits. Do you buy them and put them in chronological order as to when they came out? Because then you just look like a moron. You bought all their albums, but you're buying their greatest hits as well. What's that about? Well, excuse me, maybe I bought their greatest hits albums before I got really into them and then started buying the albums. As it happens, I didn't. But still, you know what I mean. You probably do. You probably do. Anyway, this Doug, he was, what did I say he was doing? He was walking along the road. Oh, yes, he was whistling. The dog was whistling, and as we've established, I think I've established, I'm not claiming that dogs can whistle. No animal can. Well, there's probably some animal that can whistle. Most likely a bird of some sort. I'm sure there were, of course there are. There are birds who can whistle. There are birds who can play a tune that sounds very close to what a human being sounds like when it's whistling. In fact, they're composing their own tunes. They're not playing back something they heard. Although, are they? Because you listen to an owl outside your window. There's some owls in this neighbourhood. They go the same tune over and over. So an owl in this neighbourhood will play a song that goes something along the lines of... I've lived in this neighbourhood. I lived here 20 years ago as well. He moved back a couple of years ago. And the owls here, back when I lived here the first time, it used to play pretty much the same tune. They go... I've lived in other neighbourhoods and other places. I've even been to other parts of the world where the owls are playing the exact same tune. Now, did they hear the same song somewhere and decide, oh, that sounds good, I'm going to pick that up? Was there local versions, like when Elvis Presley used to bring out his song in America, and then some local boy band in England would bring out the same song or be a version and that had become a hit there? I don't know. Oh, these owls all have the same music. The same music. And it's not like they're downloading it on Napster or something, because Napster was shut down many years ago, as I understand it. So they're probably getting them on Spotify or something, is it? I'm surprised you don't hear them saying ads in the middle of their songs. If that's where they're getting them, you would think a bird would play a few tunes and then stop and have an ad, unless they're getting the paid version of Spotify, which seems unlikely. How would a bird get the paid version of Spotify? Anyway, this dog, he's walking along, minding his own business, whistling a tune in his head. He's whistling, well, I don't know what the tune is because he doesn't know what the tune is. Just some tune. It could be in fact, it's probably a bird song. You probably heard a bird song and it's stuck in his head as an earworm. That probably happens with animals, you know. It's more likely that that's what would happen to animals than that they'd hear some of our music and start singing it. Unless they were a parrot, I suppose. If a dog is going to get an earworm in its head based on something it heard and start whistling it in its head, realistically, it's most likely to be another animal, such as, for example, a bird. It's probably walking along the street and there's birds. Maybe some owls going. And the dog is barely noticing. Subconsciously, it's absorbing this melody, whistling to itself, going, "Can you hear that? You probably can't. That's me trying to whistle. It's not working out. For one thing, it's so quiet that it's causing a load of wind on the microphone. It's not going to work, not least because I can't whistle. Well, I attempted to there. I went, no, just sounds like there's wind on the microphone. Sounds like I farted on it, except there's no melody to it. A fart would have had more melody. What I'm doing, attempting to whistle here, is basically just causing wind to blow. There's no sound coming. The only sound is being caused by the vibration on the equipment here. It's not being caused by my mouth. My mouth is just pushing air towards the equipment. I'm causing the equipment to make more of a melody than I am. What happens? I went to schools where they teach you a musical instrument, a tin whistle or a recorder or something. They'll encourage you to learn that. I did music in the intermediate certificate that you do halfway through secondary school. Did music in that. I did quite well. I got a C. It was quite good. And yet I've never learned to whistle. Nobody at school ever attempted to teach me to whistle. I studied music formally in school, 2 years and 1 term of music. They taught me about the great composers. They taught me that Schubert brought out a song about a trout and a symphony about a trout, and one is like a long instrumental version of the other. Stuff like that. Never once taught me how to whistle. Never. Wasn't really a practical music course. They didn't teach instruments. Well, at least surely they teach you the theory of whistling, how the mouth forms noises like that, how the wind works, music theory of whistling. So at least I'd know how to whistle even if I can't whistle. But no, I can't whistle and I also don't know how to whistle. It's like I can't drive for various reasons, but I know how to drive. Well, actually, no, I don't. I could well imagine that I could be someone who can't drive but know how it's done because I've studied the theory. I did in fact pass the driver theory test, now that you mention it. That's more about obeying the rules. I suppose whistling is about not obeying the rules. Whistling is about abandoning everything that musician wrote and put down on paper. That musician laboured over an easel for hours and hours writing sheet music, instructing all the musicians how to play it properly, and then someone just comes along and whistles it with their mouth and their tongue. I suppose that's breaking all the rules. Imagine if a composer saw that. You could find Mozart or Schubert or Haydn, bring them back to life and say, here's what's happening with your music right now. There were people going around on trains everywhere, older people who've had exposure to your music, or else they've had exposure to an R&B remix of it or something, wherever you call it. They're going around whistling your music. Instead of what you intricately planned and laid out on paper for them, you wrote sheet music for them that tells them everything. This sheet music, there's nothing in this sheet music saying, roll your tongue here at this point, roll your tongue out slightly like you're rolling a carpet halfway down a short hallway, and then roll it back up a bit and then blow a bit, and then inhale a bit and then blow a bit more, and then pause while your hands come in. Your hands start banging on your knees as the percussion. No, there's nothing like that in that music that was written hundreds of years ago. It's all violin section, horn section, everything goes al dente, and it's al dente, I think. You have instructions that sounds a bit like the word al dente. I know al dente is for pasta, but you have words that are a bit like al dente, but they relate to how hard you play the music, how fast or how slow, the tempo and stuff like that. So they have instructions like that in the sheet music. But they don't have, no, there's nothing saying whistle it, except I suppose for the wind section. Wait, is the horn section and the wind section two separate things? Wait, the horn section is trumpets and trombones and stuff like that. Is there a wind section as well that's flutes and whistles and things? That wouldn't have a person whistling in it, no, unless it's a very low budget thing. Unless, now that I think about it, was there a 17th century equivalent to the skiffle band back in the 60s and 70s when rock and roll came out? Kids in school used to start these skiffle bands, makeshift instruments. Then none of them could afford instruments, so there'd be things like improvised washboard instruments and guitars made out of wool or something. And those were skiffle bands. So perhaps back in the 1700s they had skiffle orchestras whereby somebody couldn't afford a clarinet, so they just learned how to whistle with their mouth. I suppose that's possible. Well, surely they'd have improvised some sort of instrument, not just use their mouth. They'd have found a tube or something in their shed, make some holes in it, turn that into some sort of a wind instrument. You don't need to whistle. That's like if they started making a squeaky noise with their sweaty armpit. There's a thing. I haven't done this in years. In fact, I think like whistling, I never really mastered it myself. But when we were kids, you'd lift up your right arm like I'm doing now. You put your other hand under your oyster, under your sweaty arm, and you could sort of make a squeaky noise using the skin. Now that would be useful in a skiffle orchestra or band if it was reliable, but it's not consistent. That's the problem. You'd have to have a consistent amount of moisture or wetness in your skin, presumably. You have to have a consistent amount of fat and not change from day to day or swell up or whatever. It'd be hard to get consistency in that. And there's one thing we know orchestras need is consistency. You're replaying a thing based on instructions that are written in front of you on sheet music. You're supposed to reproduce that. And it's not like you can listen to a recording of it because recordings haven't been invented yet. So you have to reproduce this thing perfectly every time. You have to add emotion to the armpit thing as well. Do you really think you could do that? I'm not sure you could. I'm not sure you could.
Into your head.
If you ever have an opportunity to travel in the commuter train in the front carriage, you'll see the driver show up. He'll come in through one of the passenger doors at the front of the first carriage, and then he'll go up to the door that leads into his cabin. And then he gets out his key. He has a big bunch of keys on him and a lunchbox. Some sort of satchel that he keeps his lunchbox in. He tries to find a balance. He doesn't want to be carrying a briefcase because that's a bit much, he thinks. I don't want to be looking like I'm going to an office or something, but he has a respectable looking satchel. A lot of these drivers do, I noticed. They have a respectable looking satchel in which they keep their accoutrements wherever they travel with. Can you call it travelling? They're not passengers, they're driving. They're at work. I suppose you can call that travelling. Are you travelling if you're in charge of a train or an aeroplane or a ship? Are you travelling or are you just facilitating the travelling of other people? I don't know. It's a philosophical question. We'll come back to it sometime. You see these drivers, they go into the cabin of their train. They get out at the destination and then they walk up to the other end and get into the identical cabin. It's just like going from one hotel room to another. It's probably very depressing. It's as depressing as if you're travelling around the globe, perhaps doing business, and you realise every hotel room is almost exactly identical. And that's what you realise when you become a driver of a commuter train. The end of every trip is usually less than an hour this trip, so you're changing direction several times a day. You get to the end of the line, and then you get out of your cabin. You walk along the platform to the other end, then you go into passenger doors and what's now the front carriage. It's been redesignated. You go in there, then you go up to the door that leads into your cabin. You fooster with your keys, you take out all your keys, you go, oh, I wonder which key opens this door. Maybe they have a skeleton key that opens everything. That's not important anyway. It's not about the keys. I don't know what it's about yet, but we'll find out as we get there. So he eventually gets the door open, goes in with his satchel. It's not a briefcase, but it's not some studenty backpack either. You can't be seen with one of those on the train. Drivers cannot be seen with a studenty backpack or whatever you call it on a train because they're constantly lecturing passengers that you can't be bringing a backpack on the train, and if you do, you have to put it on the ground. Don't put it on your back because that's apparently very... I've heard this a lot lately. The people who run the light rail, especially, they like to tweet a lot telling us how you're not supposed to have your bag on your back while you're on the train. You're supposed to put it on the floor. Now, I'm vision impaired. If you put it on the floor, I may well trip over it. Apparently, it's more dangerous if it's on your back. I don't understand that at all. There's plenty of good reasons to keep that thing in your back. Firstly, for a bit of personal space. You need to guard your personal space. If you're travelling standing on a tin can, you're entitled to guard a few inches of your space. Now, you might think, oh, you can guard the personal space on the floor, protect a few inches around your feet, so no complaining about the smell of your feet because they can't get close enough to your feet. Well, you want them to not be getting too close to your face or your chest or your midriff. That's the most important private part of you that you wish to protect through some minimum personal space. Like, I know it's not a car. You can't expect 3 or 4 square feet of private personal space, but you want a few inches. You're entitled to protect a few inches around your upper torso especially, and your midriff. So that's the reason you might want to keep your backpack on. Now, I do realise if you're going to do that, you have to be competent in terms of knowing what to do if you no sudden turning around and no swinging it off your back and on your back. And you have to be able to manage this bag. It's as important to be competent in managing this bag as it is to be able to manage an e-scooter or a bicycle on a public pavement. You need to be able to competently manage it. I understand that. And if you can't achieve that, you need to put it on the ground or in a luggage compartment or something. But no, don't be bullied into putting these things on the floor automatically. No. For one thing, I'll trip over that. I can't see that. I'm more likely to not trip over it if you're still wearing it. For another thing, I'm still wearing mine for various legitimate reasons to do with, that's none of your fucking business. I don't have to explain the inner workings of my disability to you. I mean, no offence, but Jesus Christ. The driver's carrying a satchel. He's not carrying a backpack, because if you're carrying a backpack as a train driver, there is metaphorical baggage to do with that, and you don't want to be carrying that. You don't want to be carrying a briefcase, because it's like, there was always one nerdy kid. His parents gave him a briefcase instead of a school bag, and he turned up with that one day. And they'd mock him and jeer at him and tell him, oh, you nerd, you absolute nerd, you're a nerd. And they'd make fun of him all day. And then the next day he'd come in again and he'd still have it. He hasn't had the nerve to just abandon it yet because his parents paid for that. And they go, oh, you still have your briefcase, you fucking nerd. And then they start mocking him. And then they start punching him and pushing him around in the yard. And then there's a third day. He wants to stop. He's realised now, I have to get out of bringing this briefcase into school. This isn't going to work out. But he's still trying to figure out how to tell his parents. He thinks maybe I'll wait till the weekend. Or maybe I'll find some way I can accidentally on purpose lose the briefcase or something and then revert to my old backpack thing. But he hasn't figured it out yet, so he still has the briefcase with him. And at this point, his classmates are 3 days in now, so they have to step things up because they don't want to get bored. So they go, let's bully him all day, every day. Well, they don't say that, they just do it. They bully him all day, and then eventually someone gets sick of all the pushing him around and verbal bullying and all that stuff. So they decide to just take out a gun. Doesn't happen in this country, thankfully. Anyway, this driver, he's got his satchel, and it's kind of like a leathery, I suppose a bit like a school bag. It's more like something a school teacher would carry. A male school teacher would carry a satchel like this. Or maybe something along the lines of a messenger bag. Something like that. So he brings that in, he closes the door behind him. He hangs up his coat. He has his own little, they have their own coat hooks in there. Some of them even bring a coat hanger, which I think is absolutely ridiculous. The whole point of a coat hook is that you have one at work, you hang your shit up there and you don't need a coat hanger because it's not your wardrobe. You're not storing it permanently. You're just putting it there. You're going to wear it when you're leaving. The only time you need to put on a coat hanger is if you've washed and ironed it after you got there, and then you're putting it away for next time you need it. And that's the problem with these identical cabins at each end of the train, and on every train, 20 or 30 of these trains, and they all have identical cabins. They're just like identical hotel rooms that the business traveller comes across. The problem with those, with both the cabins for the train driver and standard hotel rooms all over the world for the business traveller, you go into one of these hotel rooms, and because they're all the same, it looks so familiar. Your brain accidentally trains itself to think that when you leave that hotel room, travel to the next country, go into another hotel room, everything you left in the wardrobe in the previous hotel room will be available to you in the wardrobe in the next hotel room. And that would be nice if that was how it worked. Hopefully someone's going to invent that one day. A virtual hotel room. Some sort of system where one of these big multinational hotel conglomerates had like a permanent virtual hotel room. Wherever you go, you can leave your stuff in the wardrobe and it just automatically appears as if by magic in the next hotel room. Until this moment, I was thinking that would have to be done by magic or something. Because I've had this idea in my head for a long time. But it just occurred to me, it's a well-organised international hotel system. Surely they should be able to transport all the stuff to your next hotel. You don't have to worry about it at all. It's all automatic. So we have international shipping for everything now. I can order something from a website in another country and have it arrive tomorrow or the day after. Surely that's not beyond the bounds of possibilities. Why not? You get stuck in this mode when you're doing all this travel where you think, oh, it's all done for me. Everything's done for me. I'm done for, because I'm going to be dead soon from all the stress from constant international travel. But that's not what I mean. I mean, it's all done for me. My breakfast is made, literally put on a plate for me. Well, it's on a buffet, maybe a trough. It's somewhere the food is in a trough and you put it on the plate yourself. Oh no, you're used to having everything done for you. Your stuff is cooked, your bed is made, you get up out of bed and you just leave it and leave the room and you come back and it's made because someone comes in and says, oh, that poor fella, his bed is a mess. I'm going to go in and fix it for him. Because he is, after all, paying us. He's paying us for this. He's paying us literally to make his bed. So we'll make his bed for him. He might even change the sheets. We'll find different sheets, exactly the same colour. These people who travel, they don't like change. They don't like anything new. They give them exactly the same sheets as they did last night. Especially if they're in the same hotel as they were in last night. We'll change the sheets, but the new ones will be identical. They have to have a system for that as well, of course, because they go, oh, what colour sheets did we put in this fella's room last night? Because they want to make sure we have the identical ones when we change them. Change them like for like. The way around that is just to use the same sheets all over the hotel. Of course, you go on to the next hotel where they've magically transported your wardrobe contents to the next hotel. Like you turn up and everything's there, everything's in your wardrobe. Your phone may well be plugged in, or at least the charger is plugged in. You bring your phone with you on the plane, but they ship your charger, maybe the glass you put your false teeth into, your clothes that they put in the wardrobe. What else? They transport your nightwear. They probably put that under the pillow for you. They transport your toothbrush. They put that in the bathroom. Now, they want to try and be efficient about it. So they'll say, oh, that fella, in his previous hotel room, he left half a glass of vodka and Coke on the bedside table when he checked out. So he wants to make sure when he arrives at the new hotel in the next country, there's half a glass of Coke and vodka on the bedside locker corresponding. Well, we don't want to ship the glass and the vodka halfway around the world. So no, we'll make up a new one. That may sound extravagant, but it's cheaper than shipping it, I can assure you. And it'll be somewhat fresher, perhaps. If it's timed well. So there's things like that you have to think about. What else? If he's one of those people who likes to have breakfast down at the buffet and then grab a load of pastries off the buffet table and cram them into a napkin and then sneak them up to his room for lunch, but then he's forgotten that he has to check out before lunchtime and go to his next country, well then that's no problem. Someone else in the next hotel will have done the same and they'll have forgotten they're leaving too. So the staff in the hotel will figure out, oh, someone's left their stash of croissants they were keeping for lunch. They've checked out, so we'll keep them for the next fella who we know left his stash of croissants in the previous hotel. We'll put them in a napkin and leave them wherever he left them in his previous hotel. Are you following me here? It's probably getting a bit complicated, I know. I really think this could work for us. This could work for us as a society. Anyway, the driver gets into these training cabins and he locks the door behind him and he goes, oh, look, I'm in my office now. Isn't it great? The world is my oyster. I'm the only person on this train who has a big window in front of me facing forwards. I know everyone else has windows. Every passenger has a view of a window somewhere, probably, unless they're stuck right in the middle of the crowd. But none of them has that view directly onto the tracks where you can see right in front of you where you're going. You don't want to be looking out at the passengers on the platform and the hedges at the side. That's no kind of a view to have. You want to be looking directly onto the tracks in front. You want to be looking at the tracks in front and seeing, look what's coming up. It's basically a preview of where you're going. You have a full-on visual preview of your journey every minute. It doesn't really work in a car because there's turns and it's not a digital window. It's just a window that shows what's in front of you. It doesn't show what's around the next corner that you're going to turn because your window doesn't know that you're going to turn left up there or you're going to turn right up there. So your window can't give you a view ahead of your journey coming up. But a train window can, because the train window is on a fixed track. Every time you look out that front window, you know for sure, with full certainty, that everything you see out that window directly ahead is where this train is going to be in a moment or two. It's like being one of those people who are able to see a minute or two into the future. If you're one of these passengers, you're looking out the side window, you say, oh, this is where I am now, except it's not even where I am now. It's the space beside where I am now. You get a view of whatever's beside the train. You don't see where you're going, you don't see where you are, you see whatever's beside the train. We're on the train. There's a platform with some people on it. That's beside the train. We're not going there. The train isn't going to turn left there and go into the platform. Are we looking over there? That's a hedge and some fields. We're not going into the fields. We're not in the fields. We're just passing by them, so that's not part of my journey at all. That's someone else's journey. That's some fella out counting sheep or something in the field. His journey involves going across the field. Mine doesn't. So it's irrelevant. It's as bad as looking at your phone and because of whatever way trains work, instead of what was on your phone was showing you what's on someone else's phone. They're showing you someone else's email, someone else's news feed, playing someone else's stupid music and podcasting. You don't get to see your own because Well, because it's based on the train thing where you're looking out the side window, you're seeing someone else's journey and not yours. Thank Christ they don't have the technology to do that to your phone while you're on the train. That would be a miserable experience. Commuting is miserable enough without that. That would suck monkey nuts big time, and not in a good way. In a bad way. We'd all be in a bad way then, I can tell you. We think we're in a bad way now when we get on the train and there's people who for some reason don't use earphones anymore. And I think the reason they do that is because they don't have any earphones. They don't give you earphones with your phone anymore. They say, no, everyone owns 1,000 pairs of these and everyone owns 1,000 chargers, so we're not going to provide them anymore. So anyone who didn't buy 85 phones before 2022 can never buy another charger or another pair of earphones. So bear that in mind before you start giving out about these kids on the train. It's like saying, why didn't you bring your penny farthing bicycle with you? Do you not have one? Back in either the 90s or the 2000s, the Irish government sent out an emergency pack of iodine tablets to every household in the country. You were supposed to put them away and keep them in case of a nuclear incident, such as, for example, Sellafield exploding on the west coast of England or something. So we all got these and we put them away. Anyone who's established a household since then doesn't have them. If there's an explosion tomorrow, if the whole world gets engulfed in nuclear flame, are we going to be told, don't worry, just take out your iodine tablets that we sent you 20 years ago? Every household in the country has them. We're never told if you're moving house, as I've done in the last few years. I've moved house. Do you bring them with you? Do you leave them with the previous household? Because I don't think drugs should be transferable like that. You don't give prescription drugs to other people, or you're not supposed to. You don't share prescription drugs or leave them for the next householder. Probably even less safe to do it with stuff like that. I know it's not prescription drugs, it's iodine tablets. But these are things that are so powerful, they can prevent you from being burnt to a crisp in a nuclear emergency. And they're supposed to just go, oh yeah, just share them around your household, everyone who lives in the household. One pack per household, all in one go, and then that's it forever. For the next 100 years, that's everyone's sorted. You never explain. Was it explained to you? It probably wasn't. For one thing, you're probably not in Ireland. Most of you are not in Ireland, so you never got this. I don't know what you do in other countries about your nuclear stuff. Maybe you just don't give a shit. Maybe you just think, oh, we're having nuclear stuff. We don't have nuclear stuff, that's the thing. It's a big mystery to us. So all the nuclear risk comes from other countries that have nuclear power plants and nuclear wars and nuclear deterrence and nuclear-powered submarines and nuclear-powered whatever else you do with nuclear power. I don't know what else you do with nuclear power. I've had no exposure to it in this country. We were reared on bog standard electricity and gas and coal and whatever you fuel cars with. What do you fuel cars with? I think it's petrol or electricity nowadays. And all that stuff. We didn't have any nuclear stuff growing up. In fact, there was such a mystery. I remember in my early 20s one night, I went out to the pub. I was wearing my Walkman radio, listening to a community radio station in Dublin called Livia. Half listening in a daydream to some talk show. And next thing I know, it was about 7:30 in the evening. They made an announcement about some nuclear incident on the west coast of England, saying we're trying to find some information. Went on for about 25 minutes and then they said something about a news blackout. The music program came on next and that was the last I heard of it. I went home in a panic. I thought there'd been some nuclear emergency. There was nothing about it on the television at all. Nothing anywhere. My mother thought I was having a breakdown or something. No, there was nothing. I've never found an explanation for it. I can only assume there was some arty program creator on this community radio station and maybe they made a radio play along the lines of that Orson Welles thing, except there's a nuclear emergency in Ireland. That's the only explanation I can think of. I've never found it. If you, by any chance, if you know what I was listening to that night, I think it was in the 2000s. It was on a station that was then called Livia, non-commercial. I'm getting a itchy throat just thinking about it. Or maybe it's from this tap water. I think this tap water makes my throat itchy. Hopefully the iodine tablets are more effective than that. But this radio station, it was called Livia. I think it might have changed its name to something else since. Or is all these voluntary program makers? They'd make local community programs. There was little local magazine programs and stuff. I think it must have been a radio play I was listening to. Either that or I was hallucinating, which I cannot rule out. I cannot rule out that I was hallucinating. I didn't do drugs in those days and I haven't since. I'm not a drug user. I was on my way to the pub, not on my way home. I hadn't been drinking. Well, I experienced this whole thing about an interruption to normal programming to report on some nuclear emergency, reported on it for 20 or 25 minutes, and then said something about a news blackout, and then the music program came on as normal. I don't know what it was about.
Are you going into your head?
If you're listening to this on the International Space Station, assuming that still exists, I know it's due to be shut down at some point. And by shut down, I mean they're going to let the orbit deteriorate until it crashes to the ground, or more likely to the water. Now, if they had a bit of imagination, of course, instead of crashing it down to Earth, they'd figure out some way to use the thrusters to blow it out into space and see what happens, even if it's probably not going to work. It's probably not designed to do any of that, but why not? There's little probes that they put out in the 70s that are halfway to Andromeda now. So why not have a bit of an imagination? Send this thing off to the sun or something. You're not coming down to Earth, just point that way. Any power you have left in your battery, put that into your thrusters and then turn that way and go over there. See what's over there. And you never know. 200 years from now, we might be still getting signals from that thing. There's that probe in the 70s that went to some other planet. And then it kept going. And it's still going now. It woke up again recently. It's halfway to the other side of the universe at this stage. Saying, oh, hello, I'm still here. I'm never coming home. I'm going to keep going this way. What are you going to do about it? Well, they're not going to do anything about it except say, oh, that's very impressive. You're a very impressive little probe. They like to praise their probes and robots and things. Oh, look at that little Mars rover. It's walking around in the middle of winter. The Mars rover spent a couple of years walking around the rim of a canyon. And a couple of times it went to sleep for several months and they weren't sure if it would wake up. And they say, oh, the little Mars rover has gone to sleep. Isn't that so cute? It's like when our cat does it. Except your cat does it several times a day. It doesn't go asleep for months and months and months. It manages it properly. And then it's able to go out at night for a while and go out in the day for a while and watch the neighbourhood and create panoramic images of its territory or whatever cats do that can be comparable to whatever the Mars rover does. The Mars rover just goes and goes and goes until the sun turns the wrong way and its solar panels can't get at it, and then it just goes to sleep for months and months and months. Keeps everyone waiting. Absolutely ridiculous machine. So no, don't do that. Don't do that. If you're the Mars rover, don't do that. Be more like a cat. I suppose you don't really have any choice. It's in your programming. It's a bit like when Pixar are making these movies, they want to create a realistic movement in one of their characters, the kid out of Toy Story or someone. They'll get a kid into the studio and film them moving and watch the choreography, how the muscles work, what happens to your forehead when you stretch out your mouth in the smile, all the movements that the animators need to recreate. You don't do it with the Mars rover. They don't say to the Mars rover, let's pretend you're a real rover. And now not a dog. I know that's a traditional dog's name, but no, you don't want to send a dog to Mars or program a Mars rover to behave like a dog, because that wouldn't be useful, but program it to behave a bit like a cat. Get the engineers to study a cat for a while and then program it to be more like a cat. Do all the cat nap stuff and all that. Like the animators study faces and program that in. You might as well. You're going to call it the rover anyway and anthropomorphisize it. So you might as well study animals and do it properly. Don't half-ass it. Don't anthropomorphisize it so it sounds like a human but then make it robot-y. No, make it non-robot-y. Or else go the opposite direction, make it completely robot-y and then refuse to anthropomorphisize it at all. You say, hello, is that robot number 2? Robot number 2, answer. Answer me in ones and zeros because you don't want any cutesy shit. You're robot number 1. In fact, I'm not even going to say you're robot number 1. I'm just going to say robot number 1. And then the robot number 1 will reply. Some coding shit. It's not really a reply. Where was I with this shit? Was it something about dogs? The probe thing, how did I get to that? No idea. It'll be interesting to find out later what this was about. No idea. Mars rover, thing going out into space. Space, oh yes, I said if you're on the International Space Station. Oh yeah, if you're listening to this on the International Space Station, assuming it's still going, I think it is. I think there's people stuck on that at the moment. Or were they rescued? There was people stuck on that for several months. In fact, this was last year, and they were saying they're going to be stuck up there until next year. I think it was February of this year or something they were due to be rescued, so they're probably home now. So if you're on this International Space Station now, they forgot to rescue you, so you're probably not very important, are you? Perhaps you're some sort of a rover, in which case you weren't due to be rescued, you're just part of the equipment. You see, this is what happens when they anthropomorphisize you and now you think you're one of the staff and that you've been left behind and abandoned. You have been left behind and abandoned, but that's okay because you're just a robot. You're just a piece of equipment, you're like a vacuum cleaner. Why you need a vacuum cleaner on a space station, I don't know. It's a vacuum. They don't have artificial gravity in those things generally. It's not like Star Trek. They don't have artificial gravity. So they just have a vacuum. So what happens if they want to clean there? They want to do a bit of cleaning. Do they get another vacuum that's stronger than the natural vacuum that exists in space and just point that all over the place and suck all the dust out of the air? How does that work? If you drop a sandwich on the space station somewhere and that gets sucked into the air conditioning instead of into a hoover, is that going to clog everything up? That could be a problem. Everyone's inhaling your sandwich then. I don't want to inhale a sandwich. I worked in the library of the Department of Agriculture for a couple of years. Some of the staff used to bring in very smelly sandwiches. I remember them. I come in the morning and the first thing you'd smell would be this sandwich. I suppose technically you weren't really inhaling it, but I felt like you were. But combined with all the dust, there's some very old publications in that library, very old and dusty publications, decades and decades old, and that combined with the smell of the sandwich to make what I considered a very unpleasant smell. It's probably fine. I'm probably just weird, but no. Call me weird maybe, but 80-year-old dust mixed with the smell of your sandwich that was made an hour ago, I don't like it. I think maybe what happens is it makes the sandwich smell old. It's probably delicious, and whoever is eating it was probably enjoying it very much. I suppose in a space station, though, it's different. Can taste survive in a vacuum? Can the taste of a nice sandwich survive in a vacuum? There's a question for you. I don't know. It's presumptuous. It presumes, first of all, that they're able to make a tasty sandwich there. They're astronauts and scientists. They're not culinary experts. Any sandwich they're making is probably just going to be a bog standard sandwich like any of us would make at home for our kids for their lunchbox. There's not going to be anything amazing. It's not like you're going into a Subway or something. No. So it's not going to be a particularly amazing sandwich anyway. Unless they have dehydrated, pre-made sandwiches that they reconstitute with water and they're somehow delicious. Seems unlikely though. Seems unlikely. And I'd be embarrassed anyway. If I'm a highly trained astronaut and engineer The whole world has given me their attention and praise, and I'm there eating a sandwich that someone made me on Earth before I left a year ago. I'm going to feel pretty stupid. No, I'm not going to do that. I'm just going to say, no, you don't need to make me a packed lunch for every day for the next 18 months. Just give me the ingredients and I'll make something up myself. It won't be great, but it'll be a sandwich and I'll eat it and it'll be fine. That's what I do because I have a bit of self-esteem. I don't know. So that's the space station for you. That's one place where being in a skiffle band would be quite useful. The International Space Station, now obviously, you're in good employment and you have a well-resourced space station there. They've spent millions on this space station. So if you want to set up a band there to keep yourselves occupied, that shouldn't be beyond the possibilities. The problem is you're in a vacuum in space. Musical instruments presumably work different in space. And you're not going to be able to use the normal musical instruments that you use in your average band. So you're going to need to improvise. What you're going to be setting up on the International Space Station, if you are setting up a band in your spare time, of course, they'll be doing it on the public dime. As you Americans call it, the public dime. The taxpayer dollar or the public dime. But after you shut down for the night and before you go to sleep, you're allowed to do your own thing. And if you're doing your own thing, you don't want to be watching television all the time because you're in space, you've seen it all. There's nothing the television could show you that could be of any interest to you. So no, you want to make music. You want to make new music that nobody's heard before, including yourself. So you set up a band and it needs to be a skiffle band. You need to improvise instruments. So what would you need? I don't know. I don't know anything about musical instruments. Now, I know I did say earlier that I studied music for 2.5 years in secondary school and got a C. There wasn't a musical instrument manufacturing course. No, they didn't teach us that. They didn't even teach us the theory of manufacturing musical instruments. Some teacher might have mentioned at some point that, they used to make the early tin whistles by getting a piece of bronze out from under a volcano somewhere. You'd have to live somewhere where everything is still lava and find some bronze or something that's not solidified yet. It'd be like making glass in one of those glass Waterford crystal or somewhere. They want to make a nice ornate glass vase. They get a bit of lava-fied glass. It's glass that's still hot. It hasn't solidified yet. It's basically a lump of fire. You can mold it like pottery into whatever shape you want. You could make a brass instrument that way, I presume, in those days. If you set your mind to it and you figured out some way to not get your hands burnt to a crisp, and your mouth, of course. You wouldn't be able to test the instrument until it's cooled down because it'll burn the lips off you, like having a very, very, very hot sauce, and not in a good way. And that, of course, would be one of the first skiffle bands. Can you really call it that? Because you're not improvising instruments, you're inventing the first instruments from scratch. It's everybody who made an instrument after that and not doing it the lava way. They're the ones who are doing skiffle because they're making a makeshift version of that. If the first person who ever made a clarinet made it by getting unsolidified liquid metal out of a volcano and then shaping it while it was still hot, and that was the first one ever made. Anyone who makes that musical instrument after that and does it a different way, they're the ones who are doing the skiffle because they're making a makeshift version. They're having to come up with their own new way of doing it, improvising it. Perhaps to improvise it by having a factory mass produce it using machinery and stuff. And that factory then would be creating makeshift versions of the original instrument. So there's that. Now, how do they make a brass instrument in a factory though? Maybe they use fire. I suppose it's possible. Maybe they use fire. Now that I think about it, they probably do. There's probably some fella who's like a glass blower or a pottery maker, and he's got a lump of fire in front of him and he's saying, oh, have to make another 83 of these trumpets before lunch. Have to make them all the exact same. They probably have some sort of template, I suppose, to make them all the same. There's no art to it when you're doing it that way. You're just basically on a production line full of fire. Probably terrifying. Everything's on fire and you're in the factory. If a spark goes the wrong way or you accidentally touch your arm against the hot lava, you're afraid to call up the line supervisor and say, "Hello, I just burnt myself. Can we just stop the line for a minute?" No, they'll probably fire you if you do stuff like that. So it's probably terrifying. But not as terrifying as the person who first did it on the volcano, so grow a pair. Then, of course, you get buried with your diamonds and jewellery and shit. You eventually turn to lava, then eventually you turn into diamond, and then you're a diamond wearing a diamond. If we somehow manage to not make the sun die and we somehow survive for trillions of years in this solar system, we find some way around the sun dying out thing, we're going to start eventually finding coal that's made up of very old human beings who were buried with their jewellery on, so they have diamonds inside the coal. Then if you leave it a bit longer, coal turns into diamonds, and then there's a diamond inside the... It's going to be a bit like when you find an egg that's got two yolks in it, isn't it? I suppose it'd be more like finding an egg that's got another whole egg inside it, with a shell and everything, and that egg is very, very old. It's like the outer egg's great-great-great-great-great-great-grandfather is inside the egg somehow. Kids, sometimes, they're born and they almost were a twin because when their fetus started to grow, there was a bit of a twin attached to their head or something. Then sometimes, when they become adults, they find a bit of the twin left somewhere inside their flesh. Is it a bit like that? It probably isn't. It probably isn't. But that's what watching House MD has got me to believe, so maybe it is. Who am I to argue with the likes of Hugh Laurie and his ilk? The people who wrote that shit, and Hugh Laurie's ilk, and... Wait, is there an animal called an ilk? It probably is. It probably is. I think we're approaching the end of the programme. I've no reason to believe we're not. And I have reason to believe we are, because I've been in here in this room recording for some time, and I know from experience that I'm not going to stay in here forever. Unless I drop dead, I suppose. But there's all the more reason to wrap things up now before it gets to that point and leave this room and go back out into the main area of the house, into the living room, and I don't know, do whatever it is I do there. I talk to my wife, get visited by cats, edit this crap on a computer, eat, cram food down my gullet, worry about whether the energy drinks are going to keep me awake half the night, listen to podcasts. This is the one room in the house where I don't listen to podcasts a lot. And that's because I'm doing this. I come in here to do this. Now, I do listen to podcasts in the ensuite that's attached to this room, because usually when I'm in the ensuite, I'm doing stuff whereby I can multitask. I've been known to listen to podcasts in the shower. Now, I say I've been known to listen to, nobody knows, people don't watch me having a shower, but I do go in there with my Bluetooth headphones on, and then I kind of hang them up. I keep one in one ear, and then lather everything up while I still have that in one ear, and kind of stay at the other end of the bath away from where the water is coming out. And then when I'm ready to get under the shower head, then I'll take the earphone off and pause it. And that's how you listen to podcasts in the shower. You don't, but you listen to it right up until the very last minute before you have to stop. Then you take out your earphone, hang it up safely away from somewhere where you're not going to get electrocuted. Let the water do what it has to do, and then you get out from under the water, dry one of your ears at least, and then put your earphone back into the dry ear. And then you can carry on with your podcast listening day. That's how that's done. Then I pass through this room and I think, oh, if I was just coming in here to use this room and not to get to the ensuite bathroom, I wouldn't be able to listen to this podcast I'm listening to. I suppose in theory I could listen to podcasts while I'm recording a podcast. It can't be done. I have a big set of headphones on to listen to myself here. I could put my earphones into one ear and listen to something else while I'm doing this. I do have my Bluetooth earphones for my phone wrapped around my neck at the moment. So I could do that. I don't think I will. That just get a bit silly. I know in my mind that that's just not going to make for good podcasting. I also don't want to be inadvertently influenced by whatever I'm listening to. If I'm listening to some third-party podcast while I'm talking, then I might accidentally, inadvertently say something that's not original that I've soaked in from that podcast and just repeat it. Accidental plagiarism. I wouldn't want that. I want to be original. It's another reason not to do that. If you need any more reasons, let me know. Let me know why you need more reasons. I would think 2 reasons is more than enough for anything. But if you need me to give more than 2 reasons, I'm probably trying to come up with something. I'd rather not, because I've realised lately I can't just come up with something on demand. You can't just give me a topic and say, tell me reasons for this, and I'll come up with them. No, it has to come. It has to... Anyway, I think that is the end of the program. The end of the program. Until the next time I take to the internet and do... what the fuck am I saying? Next time I take... See, that's another thing I've soaked in. I listened to a very long-running BBC radio comedy show called Just a Minute. And the original host died a couple of years ago, but for about half a century he ended every program with stuff like, oh, now next time we take to the air and play Just a Minute. And I just went, next time I take to the internet. That's nonsense. I'm not Nicholas Parsons. So no. No, 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 no. 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 I think this is the end of the program. Is it? Is this the end of the program? Well, see, now I think it mightn't be, because I think it mightn't even be usable as any part of the program. It just degenerated into something there. Well, we'll see. Anyway, that's it. That's it. Fade to black. Fade to the oral equivalent of black. Because this isn't a video. Well, it is a video. This whole podcast is available on YouTube as a video. The whole audio thing is available as a video. And then there's Into Your Head shorts as well. Those have actual video in them. Anyway, good morning.